Those are beautiful songs. Glad that you're here tonight. Sorry, last week I was not here. I was in San Antonio, and so thanks to speaking there, and thanks to Wayne who spoke in the evening, and to Darren who spoke in the morning. And Wayne should have been much better because Wayne had a lot of time to prep. And poor Darren, just an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. But I've heard such great things from both. And so I am so glad to be with you tonight and get to share tonight about the seven-colored covenant. Now, if you see the picture, you probably know what I'm talking about. But if you just saw it in the bulletin, maybe you wondered, what is he talking about? From what I understand, though, a rainbow actually does not have 7 colors. A rainbow has an infinite number of colors. And so, but typically we put them into this grouping of 7. And so tonight we are thinking about Abraham whoa, wait a minute. Who's this story about? Noah. Noah is the one. Believe me, I know the story. I just get a little confused. Tonight we're thinking about Noah. You remember Noah was in the ark and the earth was flooded and Noah was in that ark with the animals. And tonight we will be discussing some of that story. But tonight, as we get there, I want you to realize something that sometimes we don't think about, and that is that God has emotions. Now, when I say that, there have been times in life where somehow, especially in earlier generations, where men were not to show any emotion. I mean, that's what we said. That's a good thing, right? When a man doesn't cry, a man doesn't even sometimes smile, that in some places was considered too much. But the Bible is full of God having emotions, and even you think about Jesus when he looks over Jerusalem, and that he has emotion at that point, or when he hears about Lazarus dying, and what the Bible says is that Jesus wept. So from God and from the Son of God, what you see is emotion. And so we come to this point in Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 6, when God had created Adam and Eve, and God had created a beautiful garden and all those great things, and the earth was supposed to be wonderful. But this is what the Bible says. When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he had made man on earth, and he was deeply grieved. This is God, the one who created, deeply grieved. So I want you to think back, of Adam and Eve, and everything is wonderful until finally Adam and Eve, you remember, eat the fruit. They sin against God. They doubt God. They doubt God is telling them the truth, and because of that they eat. And then obviously that was the sin that God, the one thing God had said don't do. Eat anything else, just don't eat that fruit. And they did. So they're cast out of the garden, and then you have Cain killing his brother Abel. And how terrible that must have been for so many people, obviously for Abel, but also for Adam and Eve, who lose a son to death in that way, and also lose their other son, Cain, who now will be leaving and going away, and God somehow shows grace to him and puts a mark on him. But before long, as you get down to the time of Lamech, you find out that he is worse than Cain was. And he kills a man, matter of fact, and he almost gets happy about it. Instead of Cain's punishment was 7 times, mine's 70 times. And the word that's used for the man that he killed is sometimes even used also in the Bible as that maybe he killed even a young boy and brags about what he did. Usually we translate it man or young man, but it could have been even a boy he kills. The world was a terrible place. God wanted it to be good, but what God sees is that it is evil. And every inclination of a man or a woman's mind is just to do evil, to sin, and to do what is wrong. But God, with his emotions, is going to show grace. God showed grace to Noah. I want you to see in Genesis chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. It says, "These are the family records of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his contemporaries. Noah walked with God. And Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with wickedness, and God saw how corrupt the earth was. For every creature had corrupted its way on the earth. Then God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with the wickedness because of them. Therefore, I'm going to destroy them along with the earth. You say, well, where is the grace in all of this? Well, there is grace that's found here. And you say, well, where is it? Well, God is going to save Noah and his family. And I think about the grace that's there. You say, well, maybe Noah didn't need grace because Noah, he was righteous. True, I'm sure he still sinned because all people sin, fall short of the glory of God. But even let's just say Noah doesn't need it. God saves his sons and his wives, his son and his son's wives, and Noah's wife. If Noah is the only righteous one, God is showing some kind of grace to these other people by letting him keep his family. Also, that family will repopulate the earth. They'll also take care of the animals on the ark. There will be a lot of things for them to do. And God also saved the animals and birds. Now, he didn't save every animal. He didn't save every bird, but he saved those, the clean and the unclean animals. He took care of them. God showed grace. And while it probably felt like to God, it seems that he just wanted to give up and throw it away, he doesn't do that. He said, I'm not going to completely throw it away. I'm going to somehow keep this together, even though I am grieved. You know that feeling you have when you're grieved where it feels like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to have a pleasant conversation. Have you ever been upset and someone tries to come up and joke with you? I don't want to joke right now. You know what I'm talking about, that feeling? Can you see that with God? How he's grieved over the sin of the world. Just the other night, we were watching is it called the Great British Baking Show? Do you know what I'm talking about? So if Barbara and I can agree on TV, we watch food. She likes to make it. I like to eat it, so it all works out okay. And so we were binge watching one season. I don't know what season it was the other day. And this woman, she's close to getting to the finals, like 4 or 5 people left. And whatever she is making just falls apart, and she's upset. And she cries, and she is walking off the set, it looks like. And one of the hosts comes over and puts her arm around this woman. And she said, if you leave now, you will have regrets. Don't leave now. Stay in and make something out of this. Well, then, I don't know if you know this season, she ended up winning it all. She won it all because she didn't walk away. God probably felt like he even says that. I've just thrown it all away. But God does not do that. And he saves Noah and Noah's family, and he saves the animals, and he saves the birds. And they all get in. It took a while to build this boat. Obviously, would have been a strange thing to build in a place that seems like it was dry. But Noah built the ark, and God shut the door. Now that seems like one of those little pieces of trivia you don't need to know, that God shut the door, but that's often a trivia question that we say to our children. And so, who shut the door? And I don't know, Mrs. Noah? No, God shut the door. Well, why is that important? It's important for a couple of reasons at least. One, God is protecting. He's going to protect Adam and Eve. Ours, no. Boy, I'm really off. I'm just going to make it up tonight, okay? He is going to protect Noah. But you know what else he's doing besides protecting? He's determining. He is determining when the animals are in. He is determining when it's done. God decides. Even today, when someday we will see Jesus in the clouds and Jesus coming back, it will be God that determines that. So he shuts the door. He determines those times. And so they get into the ark, and they're in the water, and you can imagine how terrible that trauma is as they are in the ark, and it is raining day after day after day, 40 days and 40 nights, and they're in the ark for over a year. Can you imagine? I think about our little storm several years ago we called Harvey. 51 inches of rain, 54 inches of rain in just a few days? And that caused us enough problems. I remember seeing a report, hearing people say it and then seeing it on the news, that the next time it rained, it didn't rain then for a while, for a few weeks, but the next time it rained, there were all kinds of wrecks on I-10 because of people seeing the rain and getting nervous and trying to drive too fast and recklessly, and then had accidents because of what we might call the PTS before it becomes PTSD. And surely Noah must have felt the agony of what it is like and to cope with his feelings and emotions of what it's like to go through something like that. And so God, when they were finished and there was finally dry land, God made a covenant with Noah and the animals and the birds. And this is what God said in Genesis chapter 9 and verses 8 through 11. Then God said to Noah and his sons, with him, understand that I'm establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and every living creature that is with you, with the birds, with the livestock, with all the wildlife of the earth that are with you, all the animals of the earth that came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, and never again will every creature be wiped out by floodwaters. There will never again be a flood to destroy the earth. It'll never be like that. There will be floods, but never that kind of cataclysmic flood ever again. Now, there are different covenants that are made in the Bible. This one is the covenant with Noah, the fancy word Noahic, you might say, covenant. So you have that covenant. There are other covenants you know of. The covenant with Abraham, that Abraham would be the father of a great nation. Then there was the covenant with Moses. That is the law. The Mosaic covenant we sometimes talk about. The Davidic covenant was the fourth one, the one that David, someone from the line of David, would be on the throne forever. Jesus was in the line of David. And then finally what we call the new covenant, the one that we live under today in the New Testament. Those are the 5 covenants. So often we talk about how the covenant was put away. The old one ended and the new one came with the Mosaic covenant. But the covenant with Noah never ended. God never said it's over. So there is still that covenant that God will not destroy the whole earth by water. I do remember there's a song, won't be water but fire next time. And so he will never destroy the earth just by water. And also, part of that covenant is that we have some kind of, that we are to take care somehow of the animals and take care of the earth. I don't mean worship the earth. I don't mean do that, but be the managers of the things on earth. So, a covenant is an agreement, not necessarily, I put 2 people, but really what it is, an agreement between 2 entities. Typically, it is 2 people, but here it is God, who is more than a person, with us. And a covenant is personal. Sometimes you hear the word contract, and people say, well, it's like a contract. It is like a contract, but a contract is not personal. I signed a contract just, several months ago for something we were doing, and I remember signing online, and I was to put my initials online, and then all at once the page would jump. Like several pages, and then I was supposed to sign again, and then it would jump somewhere. They never in a million years expected me to read it. They didn't think about that at all. It was just sign. I never met anybody. I was just signing, right? Nothing personal about that at all. But it is extremely personal when you consider a covenant between God and people. A covenant is personal, and when you get, for example, to the covenant that God made with Abraham, you think about circumcision, for example, that's extremely personal. A covenant is never to be broken. For any reason, a covenant is not to be broken. I don't go back on my covenants lightly, or shouldn't, and you shouldn't, and God shouldn't, because the consequences would be drastic if one went back on their covenant. So God doesn't go back on his covenant, but understand that God didn't need a covenant to be faithful. God is going to be faithful. It's people who need a covenant to be reminded to be faithful. I know I've shared this with you before, but as I like to do, I like to tell you again. When we moved into our house here in Katy, and they gave us those documents back in the day before it was online, And it was just sign away. I don't know what we were even signing for. Hundreds of papers with my signature on it. As far as I know, we agreed to build a Walmart in St. Louis or something. I have no idea what I was signing. But I said to the woman there at the office, I said, I want you to know that I'm going to pay this either way. This is not for me. This is for you and for the other homeowner. She said, just keep signing. Yeah, right? That I want to be a person of my word. Not a person looking for a loophole, but a person of my word. God does not create a covenant because God might go back on it if he didn't have one. It's us that has the issue that goes back on our covenants. So in John chapter 9, verses 12 through 17, there is also what I would call a drastic sign of this covenant, just like circumcision was for Abraham. And you remember with Abraham, there were a bunch of cows that were split in two, and Abraham walked amongst God saying, if I go back on my covenant, then this can happen to me. You can split me in two. And the same for you if you go back. So this was the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant, listen to where he says, not just for a short time, but a covenant for all future generations. I have placed my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I form clouds over the earth and the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures. Water will never again become a flood to destroy every creature. The bow will be in the clouds, and I will look at it, and I will remember the permanent covenant between God and all the living creatures of the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and you and every living creature on the earth. Now, obviously, the rainbow is used for various things these days, and some that I would not be very pro on. It also makes me think of those little rainbows that are in Lucky Charms. Do you know the cereal with the little rainbows in them, right? You can buy the marshmallow things now without buying the cereal. Wow, what has this world come to? It's wonderful. But the bow was not just a sweet little rainbow. And the bow was not something for the LGBTQ plus group. And the bow was not just something sweet to say, hey, let's decorate our child's room with bows. Because it wasn't just a rainbow, it was a bow. For those of you who are hunters, it was used to kill. And so there are two options for what the meaning of the bow is. It could be God is saying, now I am putting down my bow. And I put it down on the ground. I'm putting my bow, and now I will always remember you every time I see it. Or it is God, the one who had walked between the animals that he had split in two, to say that you can kill me like this, or you can be killed if we go back on our covenant. This is God saying, this bow is now aimed at me if I go back on the covenant. God saying, I am dead serious about covenants. I don't joke around. So you'd say, well, no one would kill God. No, the point is that bow will never be shot because God will never go back on his covenant. You see, that's what's so incredible. God does not lie. God does not break promises. God is always faithful. Is that not incredible? Always faithful. Always faithful to his word. He never lies. He never somehow tries to get around things. He is always faithful. And so my question for us is, will I be faithful to him? Is the only reason that I'm faithful to God because I am afraid if I'm not, I'll go to hell, or I'll disappoint someone. Well, while those things may be true, understand this. Fear will only hold us for so long. It is about more than fear. The God of emotions wants to have a relationship with his creation. He wants us to love him and be with him and enjoy him, rather than just saying, okay, we're going to act like two gunfighters off in the Wild West somewhere. That is not what God called us to. That is not relationship with God. It makes me think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego whenever they were in the fiery furnace in the time of Daniel, and they say, our God will save us. But even if he doesn't, we will be faithful to that God. Even if he doesn't. I think about a young woman by the name of Grace Maxwell. Now, some of you go, I have no idea who Grace Maxwell is. But you probably have heard a little bit about her. Grace's grandfather died about 10 days ago. Sad thing, happens, but sad thing. She was off in college in Ohio, Cedarville University, second year engineering student. And her grandfather lived in Kansas. So she did what she could do. She flew back home to be at the funeral for her grandfather. Well, just on a Wednesday night, she got on a plane in Wichita. And she was in that plane that hit the helicopter hit it, however you want to say it. And she, along with the other 69 people in that accident, all died. She was one of those people. And so at Cedarville University, 4,000 students were there for her funeral. The whole school came out for the funeral. Hundreds of people on their knees praying, thanking God for his blessings, and also asking God for his grace. They asked one of the students about grace. And she said, her friend said, if you gave her a single second to talk, she would tell you how much she cared and how much faith had impacted her. Don't you want to be that kind of person? That if we were to pass on, they would say, he was a man of faith. She was a woman that was ready to talk about her faith. Not, oh boy, I hope God has grace on him. Wouldn't that be incredible if we were known that way? God does not go back on his promises. People do. Tonight, I pray that you will make that kind of commitment and covenant and promise, however you want to call it, to God, and be faithful to him. For some of us, it's recommitting our lives to Christ is what it is. Others, excuse me, maybe it's being baptized into Christ. At second service today, we had a baptism. A man named Hyro that Barbara and I got to study with last night was baptized this morning. And you can be baptized and receive God's forgiveness and the gift of his Holy Spirit. You can do that. If you need prayer, we'll all pray for you. Or you can write to us at prayer@mcoc.org. We just want to be faithful to God. And what a blessing that he gives us each other to help us on that road toward our faithfulness with the commitments that we make to each other and that we make to him. Come as we stand and sing.